Hello everybody, I am open to week 3. We are going to be covering chapter 2 this week, which is all about positive psychology. So here is the to-do list for this week. This is the week that the other book starts coming into play. So you ordered the main text by Harrington, and then you also ordered The Upside of Stress by Dr. McGonigal. And so this will be the first week that you have a reading in The Upside of Stress. So let's take a look here. These are the objectives that go along with the chapter. And of course, I put a podcast here that you can click on and watch and listen to that goes over each of these objectives in a little more detail. And again, this is good to use as you're working your way through the chapter. I would look at it and overview it and listen to the podcast before you start reading. That way you have an idea of what you're going to be covering. And then you can use these objectives to help you study for the test and just give you a good grounding for what key elements need to be covered. Here are your lecture slides that go along with the reading. So again, might be a good idea to print those out in notes format, just so you have them next to you as you're reading and you can kind of draw comparisons to what's on the slides versus what's in the reading. I am text heavy, so I tend to put more emphasis on the text, but I make sure that the lecture slides nicely cover all the key concepts from the reading. I have a couple different videos for you to watch this week. One is called The How of Happiness with Sonia Lyubomirsky. Dr. Lyubomirsky is at UC Riverside in California. I actually studied under her as an undergrad, and then again as a graduate student. She is a social psychologist, and her area of research is centered on positive psychology, specifically the study of happiness, and she's been doing this for a couple decades now. And so she has a ton of research that she's collected cross-culturally, worldwide, on what makes people happy. Why do people pursue happiness, and what brings them happiness? So this is just a video that she did, kind of recapping on all of her research, and it really is a nice kind of play off of the chapter reading this week. And then I have a video from Brene Brown. Some of you might be familiar with her. She's really popular in the counseling field. So if you've taken theories of counseling, you might have seen this video, but this is just a quick one on empathy. Specifically, like, how is empathy different from sympathy, and how it really is the driving force behind compassion and forgiveness, and also is very connected to one's meaning in life and purposeful living, which are all concepts that we're talking about this week with the reading. So I put that in there for you. And then this is just an exercise that I thought it would be fun to do. The book talks about some different exercises in positive psychology, has some different assessments, but this is just a short video of a couple different positive psychology exercises. It's also going to be tied to your discussion post for this week, so you can check that out below. But I'd like you to try one of the exercises in the video. There's a couple different ones. And then you're going to be talking about them in your discussion post. These same types of exercises are also mentioned in The Upside of Stress. We might not get to them this week, but we'll be doing them throughout the semester, and they'll be incorporated into the discussion. So this is going to be one video that you might want to come back to just because of its value in processing sort of self-compassion, having compassion for ourselves. So you can choose what you want to do with these exercises, and then you're going to be talking about it in the discussion. So here is your discussion for this week. I've again put the cite as you write instructions. So you're going to want to make sure before you dive into week 3 discussion that you've looked at my feedback to you on your week 2 discussions, making sure that you're in line with what my expectations are. If there's anything that you need to improve upon, I will mention that in my feedback in your grade. So if you go to my grades and you click on your discussion and you see feedback there, those are usually areas that I'm asking for improvement on. If I don't have any comments, but you didn't get the maximum points on your discussion, take a look at the rubric. Remember the discussion grading rubric? It's in the Start Here menu. And you can kind of use that rubric as a guide to kind of see like what might I be missing. There are going to be weeks coming ahead where I don't have time to give detailed feedback to each student on your posts, but really rely on that rubric, which kind of lets you know like, hey, if you got, a 20 out of 25, here's what you might have been missing, or here's what you might not have had. So that being said, for the discussion, you're going to want to use Harrington Chapter 2 and the introduction of the upside of stress, and you're going to use those to answer these following questions, along with the videos that you've watched for this week. So in the upside of stress, Dr. McGonigal says that we'll look at academic stress, work stress, family stress, health stress, financial stress, and social stress, as well as the challenges of dealing with anxiety, depression, loss, and trauma, that these things might be described as suffering. And so those are things that we're going to be talking about throughout reading the book. Of those stressors that she mentions, which would you say have been like your top stressors in the past year, and how have you felt that you've dealt with them? What do you think will be your top stressors 10 years from now? So it's kind of asking you to project into the future. The things that stress you out now aren't going to be the things that stress you out necessarily in 10 years. So definitely incorporate some of what she talks about into your answer. And then using the main text, what can we learn from Fredrickson's broaden and build model? So you got to know what that model means. And her undoing hypothesis about how to cope with stress. What do they tell us about the benefits of positive emotions in the coping process? So Fredrickson has this model for how we cope with stress, and it has a lot to do with positive emotions. Okay, so you're going to want to talk about that. How do well-being issues relate to stress and health? So one's overall well-being, how does that relate to stress and to health? And if you were to map on an optimal lifestyle and could only select 3 well-being practices, which would you select and why? So if you were to, try to live your best life according to what research says is good for us to do, what big 3 practices would you include in that? How do life meaning and purpose issues relate to stress and health? So again, everything we're relating to stress and health, right? We're going to be covering this a lot. It's going to be such a huge portion of what we deal with in this class. One's life meaning, what you think your life means, and why you think you're here, your purpose for living. It relates to how you deal with stress and your overall health. So tell me about that. In what ways? Why is that so? How do they affect your sense of optimism, as well as your perception of control? So we all perceive that we have or don't have a certain level of control in life and with what happens to us in life, and how might that affect our stress and our health? How do they affect your experiences of compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude? And any personal examples that you have of these would be great. If you have examples, please explain. And then lastly, those positive psychology exercises I mentioned, you'll choose one You'll describe which one you chose and why you chose it. You'll do the actual exercise and then state how you felt starting the exercise and then how you felt after. Did you discover anything about yourself in the process? So the goal here is to be a little open-minded. Some of you may or may not be comfortable with doing some of these exercises. They're definitely self-reflective. They cause a person to kind of dig a little deeper into your psyche and into just things that maybe you haven't thought about that affect you and how. So I would just encourage you to keep an open mind as you work through those kind of exercise throughout the whole class, and use it as an opportunity to grow. Really hoping that some of you experience some honest to goodness growth, personal growth that will help you through your stressful challenges. All right, and then lastly, this week you have your first exam. It's going to cover chapters 1 and 2, so you can take a look at the syllabus for that. You're going to have 40 minutes to complete the exam. There are 40 multiple choice questions. Each one's worth 2 points. And you're going to have until Sunday to complete that. You want to make sure you leave yourself enough time to finish. Once that timer hits 11:59 p.m., the test will close, and if you are in the middle of it, you'll get locked out. So make sure you leave yourself plenty of time to not have that happen. Have a backup option ready in case your laptop fails or your Wi-Fi goes out. Be in a location where your Wi-Fi is reliable. That would be my recommendation, and you should be good to go. Please remember that I have Zoom office hours. If you need to talk with me, meet with me one-on-one, discuss any of the material, have any questions, I'm available to do that. You would just need to email me and let me know when you would like to meet, when you're thinking about doing that. Okay? Thanks, everyone.